Yesterday, I looked at Wallace Stevens' poem called Of Modern Poetry. I want to read through it again. Yesterday, when I quoted from Jacques Maritain, it was fundamentally about the luck of the poet who inherits a living tradition in which everything is connected. Today, I want to read something from Maritain about what's needed for such luck, for such a coherent universe. Okay, the poem once more. The poem of the mind in the act of finding what will suffice. It has not always had to find. The scene was set. It repeated what was in the script. Then the theater was changed to something else. Its past was a souvenir. So in that regard, the past of Dante's Inferno, his Paradiso, and so on, is a souvenir. It's not something to which we have access in the same way that we did before. Now, to the rest of the poem. This is Stevens talking about what the poem of the mind in the act of finding what will suffice must be like. It has to be living, to learn the speech of the place. It has to face the men of the time and to meet the women of the time. In other words, this poetry has to have something extremely contemporary about it. It can't be distanced as the poetry of the epic past is distanced. It has to find the language that it uses in the actual language of the people of that time. What does it have to do? It has to think about war, and it has to find what will suffice. What is it that's going to be in this poetry that will be sufficient to the people of its own day? That's the question. It has to construct a new stage. Let's say that the stage of Dante's poetry was the whole cosmological order as it had been conceived in the Ptolemaic universe. Well, the modern poet can't use that. That's a souvenir. He has to construct a new stage. And what's difficult is that he's conscious of this construction. It has to be on that stage, the poetry does. And like an insatiable actor, slowly and with meditation, speak words that in the ear, in the delicatest ear of the mind, repeat exactly what it wants to hear, at the sound of which an invisible audience listens, not to the play, but to itself, expressed in an emotion as of two people, as of two emotions becoming one. What's Stevens saying here? It's as though he's imagining something like Shakespeare's plays, and this actor who is speaking with meditation, words that are going to repeat what the mind most needs to hear, what it wants to hear, so that the audience is not listening to the play, but to what is deepest and most interior in itself, in an emotion as of two people, two emotions becoming one, some sort of marriage between the mind and the world that's being presented. And then Stevens has this striking image of the actor as a metaphysician in the dark, twanging an instrument, twanging a wiry string that gives sounds passing through sudden rightnesses. So somehow the instrument gives these sounds a rightness that contains the mind, below which it cannot descend, beyond which it has no will to rise. If you think of Dante's Paradiso and the satisfactions of that poetry, it gives something beyond which the mind has no will to rise. Why would you rise past that vision of God? So for Stevens, it must be the finding of a satisfaction. This poetry has to be a satisfaction with the language and with the world that it depicts, regardless of what exactly is being shown. A man skating, a woman dancing, a woman combing, the poem of the act of the mind. And now to the other paragraph from Maritain, which I'll read as a kind of commentary of sorts on what Stevens has written. Maritain certainly knew the work of Stevens, and I suspect that Stevens read Maritain. And this is, again, from Maritain's essay on the luck of Dante. He writes, "What matters to poetry in a close and direct manner are, I think, certain extremely simple but basic presences or existential certainties assured by the universe of thought, which constitutes the vital environment of poetic intuition." Sometimes when I'm reading Maritain, I remember what Lord Byron wrote about Coleridge, which is that he's always explaining metaphysics to the nation. And Byron quips, "I wish he would explain his explanation." There's a little of Maritain that needs that kind of quip himself. But in any case, Maritain's writing about these necessary certitudes that poetic intuition needs. For instance, a certitude both of the mysterious, indisputable existence and the exigency of intelligibility involved in things. That is, you can't dispute the fact that there's an intelligibility in the very character of the world, the very character of things. A certitude of the interiority of the human being and of its importance. We have an inner nature. We aren't just behaviors, as the behaviorist psychologist would like to claim. A certitude that between man and the world there is an invisible relationship deeper than any material interconnection. There's a connaturality, as Maritain puts it elsewhere. Our natures correspond to and answer to the natures of things in the world. A certitude that the impact of his freedom on his destiny gives his life a movement which is oriented and not lost in the void, and which has to do in one way or another with the whole fabric of being. I think that's what Stevens is hinting at also. What we need, what the poem needs, what will suffice is this kind of certitude that our lives mean something, that we are, by our natures, connected to the world, that we exist in a universe that has a logos to it, an intelligibility which is knowable and which ought to give us faith in the direction of our lives.